Michael Romeo, one of my big influences when it comes to songwriting, riff writing, arranging, progressive playing, and especially soloing. I'm always fascinated by his solos, the build-up, the licks, the ideas, the motifs, and all that kind of stuff. In my career as a guitar player, I have covered and analyzed a few solos from him yet. And I would say I have found some sort of patterns or ideas that are repeating through solos and solos and solos. And therefore I thought, why not making a video about how to write a solo like Michael Romeo. Hey Guitar Champion, what's going on? Justin Hombach here, back from my practice cave, and welcome to today's video. Here we go. Michael Romeo, or like we Hessens used to say, the Michael Romero. Today's video we are going to talk about the scales Michael Romeo is using, the arpeggios, the phrasing, the technique. I have a few licks for you, and then in the end I have a full solo that I covered from Michael Romeo, and there we're going to analyze and we're going to talk a little bit about the build-up. And this is really important because all the other kind of stuff, there are a lot of videos about that out there, and it's really easy to get this into your playing. But the real interesting stuff that Michael Romeo is doing is when it comes to his build-up, how he constructs his solos. And therefore I only can recommend to stick to the end to see the real magic of Michael Romeo. Alright, as in the tradition from Michael Romeo, I have this Ibanez today here. It's an RGD, the perfect guitar for playing one step below. This guitar is tuned into D standard. So if you like this video and if you want to support this channel, then feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, or share this video and this channel to all of your guitar nerd friends. I would say let's dive deep into the playing of Michael Romeo. Let's first check out some scales that he's using. Here we go. So when it comes to note choices or the choice of the scale, I would say probably around 80% of the time Michael is of course playing together with a rhythm guitar. It's really important to look, okay, what kind of scale do we have in the rhythm guitar, and by that we can choose the scale that we want for our soloing. But the other 20% are really interesting here, what he's doing. I would say one of the scale that he's mostly known for, what he's doing there, is the so-called Phrygian dominant scale. The Phrygian dominant scale is a scale that you will hear, see and play really often in metal. It's this kind of Arabic sounding scale. It's a Phrygian scale, but not in minor, but other than that in major. So you have the sharp 9, the major 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the minor 6th, the 7th, and the root. And this is also the 5th mode. It's a mode from harmonic minor. So E Phrygian dominant, for example, comes from the A harmonic minor scale. They are sharing the same notes together. So you will hear him most of the time playing this kind of scale because a lot of the riffs that he's playing is based on the Phrygian dominant scale. Other than the Phrygian dominant scale, he's also a guitar player that is often using the pentatonic scale. You know, actually the kind of bluesy scale. And he's using this one in a bluesy context as well. We're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to phrasing, because Michael Romeo is a player that comes from blues. You can clearly hear that in his phrasing and in his note choices, and he's not only copying Yngwie all the time, he's also kind of a lot of incredible kind of blues feeling into his playing. So the pentatonic is something that he's using really often. I heard, for example, in the songs Black from his solo record, from his first solo record, or Masquerade, the bonus track from the Odyssey, he is using the pentatonic not only in, I would say, underneath rock riffs or some sort of kind of stuff, which are not really often happening in Symphony X. One example that comes into my mind, Adductor, is the last song from the first Iconoclast record. I don't know the name right now, but there he is using a little bit more of kind of bluesy pentatonic kind of shredding over this rock riff. He is also using the freedom of the pentatonic when we have riffs like this one. Something like that. Heavy riffs where we don't have the color of the Phrygian dominant kind of scale, but yeah, this heaviness coming from the flat 9, maybe the sharp fifths, the diminished fifths, and all that kind of stuff. And therefore he's using, of course, as I've said, the freedom of the pentatonic, because the pentatonic only consists out of 5 notes. And the good thing is, when we have a scale like the pentatonic, which only consists out of 5 notes, is that there are less notes that can clash together, that are sounding weird. For example, like the sharp 9 or the regular 9 and then the flat 9 together. All of this does not exist in the normal pentatonic kind of scale. What other people would say as a disadvantage of the pentatonic scale, because it often sounds dumb and repetitive, you know what I mean, and kind of boring after playing with it a while. In this kind of context, we get a completely new feeling of the pentatonic, and this is pretty cool, and I highly recommend to check that out in your own riffing as well. When you have some really heavy and dark riffs, try to play the pentatonic over it and try to include the blue note, the flat 5. He's sometimes playing pentatonic riffs like something like that, playing with a flat 5 a little bit, creating motifs out of that. We're talking about motifs later on a lot. So much for the pentatonic. And sometimes he's also including symmetrical scales, so-called the halftone whole tone scale or the whole tone scale. Especially on the record 5, there's a solo, I think from the last song, where he's playing the whole tone scale. Okay, but what is the whole tone scale? Well, the name is the key right here. It's a scale, a 8-note scale. Oh no, sorry, a 6-note scale, a hexatonic scale, which only consists out of whole notes. So when we are talking in the E whole note scale, for example, we have E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, C, and D. And by the way, I'm talking about this in every video. Yes, this is a guitar which is down tuned 1 step, but I still call this string here the E string, just to get this confusion out of the way. Alright, again, so the whole tone scale, for example. You can create some really interesting fusion-esque kind of sounds with it, because it's the whole tone scale have no sort of building up tension and releasing it to the 1 accord. There's always this kind of tension that will never get released. And the halftone whole tone scale or whole tone halftone scale depends a little bit on which kind of direction you want to see it, but in the end it's nearly the same. It's a scale which consists out of halftone step, whole tone step, halftone step, whole tone step, halftone step, whole tone step. Here we have now an 8-note scale. In E it would sound like this. Or halftone or whole tone halftone would be one thing that I've stolen from Michael in my own band, Eternity's End, is something that we can use these halftone whole tone or whole tone halftone scales over a Phrygian dominant riffs, because there aren't. It's 1 note extra which comes into the scale, but this note is not really clashing with the rest of the scale or with the rest of the riffs. And in this case, we have a minor third and a major third inside of this symmetrical scale, inside of the halftone or whole tone scale. Again, halftone, whole tone, we have minor third here, major third here. Okay, we have also the sharp 11, which brings a little bit of interesting sound to the adding to the Phrygian dominant kind of scale. We have to take a little bit we have to be a little bit more carefully about this kind of note, because this one is actually clashing with the normal fourth. But other than that, playing over a riff like this one here, the half-tone whole-tone scale, works pretty fine. You can hear that, for example, my band Eternity's End in the song Hounds of Tindalos. There, the build-up lick from my solo is a half-tone whole-tone scale over a Phrygian dominant riff. Okay, alright, so much for the scale. Let's check out how Michael is using arpeggios. When it comes to arpeggios, he mostly have two approaches, I would say. He's not really a player that has a chord progression underneath his solo, where he really is playing the melody from his solo together with the chord progression, like John Petrucci would do it, for example. When Michael is having a chord progression in his riffing or in his songs, he's outlining those really often with some really interesting arpeggio kind of shapes and ideas, and often with this kind of neoclassical approach. But in solos, he sometimes, he sprinkles some arpeggios inside of his solos to get a little bit kind of more interesting flavor besides all of that scale playing. And here especially I have two ideas and approaches. We're going to take a deeper look into his arpeggio playing a little bit more when we're talking about technique and about some licks. Here what really stands out are two methods that he's using. One is splitting the arpeggio in a sequence of two. For example, when we are taking a D minor arpeggio, starting on a note, for example the fifth here, then going one step from the arpeggio below, and then repeating this kind of pattern on a higher step from the arpeggio, for example the root, going to the fifth, minor third, going to the root, and again fifth, going to the minor third, and so on. We can do this with major as well. We can do this one with all kind of inversions. We not only have to do it with this kind of shape, we could also do it with this one here. Or with this one here. And we are not only allowed to do it ascending, we could also do it descending, of course, like this here. Of course, Michael is really famous for his tapped arpeggios. We're going to talk a little bit about this more in the licks and in the technique section. One thing he's also doing with arpeggios that I want to mention here is his sweeping. And Michael is not really that kind of sweep picking guy. This kind of sweeping that has a lot of repetition in it and is kind of getting boring after a while, only playing like that. He is doing a little bit more of interesting approach, and I would assume it's an approach that he have learned by listening to people like Jason Becker and varying a little bit more with the rhythmical kind of idea and playing, for example, this 5-string sweep arpeggio here with this kind of hammer-on pull-off sequence in front of it. Adding maybe the whammy bar to it. I'm not a whammy bar player. I don't have a guitar that has a whammy bar right here, so I cannot demonstrate that. But you will hear this kind of phrasing, this kind of idea combined with sweeping a lot in his playing. Alright, speaking of phrasing, let's talk a little bit about his phrasing after we've talked a little bit about arpeggios. As I've mentioned in the beginning, Michael has a bluesy kind of phrasing, or a phrasing that is heavily influenced by blues players. I would assume Stevie Ray Vaughan, for example, Gary Moore maybe, all those kind of bluesy guys, which comes a little bit more from the 80s area, maybe late 70s. I would not say so much the 60s Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton guys. I would assume, but I can be wrong here. When it comes to his vibrato, he has a relative wide vibrato, often vibrating in whole tone step, but a really or relative slow vibrato. I'm analyzing vibratos often with a rhythmical kind of point of view. Yngwie, for example, is using a lot of triplet vibratos. I've made a whole video about the vibrato from Yngwie. You can watch it right here. And there I'm also talking a little bit about my approach, how I analyze vibratos from other players, depending on the intensity and the rhythmical kind of aspects and the tempo. And Michael is having a vibrato that is often based on 8 notes. So you can practice this kind of vibrato, for example, when you have 150 BPM, you can turn on your metronome and then you can try to vibrate in 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then of course try to vibrate with the wider range like Michael has, for example, like this. Alright, and then he's of course heavily influenced by Marty Friedman when it comes to phrasing. One thing that Marty Friedman is doing a lot is doing this going from a half step below and bending into a target note. And Michael is doing this as well really, really often when he has some sort of lick like this one here, when we're going from the flat 5 to the 5, bending up a half tone step. And other than that, you will find all kinds of blues cliches in his playing. The double stop endings, the kind of licks, I don't know how to name them. But yeah, don't underestimate the power of the blues inside of metal playing, especially in players like Michael Romeo. If you want to improve your playing, I can only recommend you to check out blues players. And if you want to have a really, really great recommendation, then check out a guy called Michael Wagner. Also a Michael, he's a German guitar blues friend of mine, and he has inspired me a lot to pick up the blues guitar, and this brought my playing in general to the completely next level. Then of course Michael is doing all kinds of other phrasing stuff, bendings, slides, playing ideas where we are taking a minor third, for example, and then we are sliding around the scale, ascending or descending, like that, for example. Really classical kind of phrasing ideas. Now we want to have a little bit more action on the guitar. Let's check out the technique that Michael is using. I would say Michael Romeo is mostly known for his fluent guitar playing. He's not so much that kind of percussive speed picking guy like Michelangelo Badio or like Paul Gilbert, Rusty Cooley, all those kind of guys, which is also really great. I love them as well. But Michael is a little bit more of a legato playing. He's doing a lot of hammer and pull-off stuff. Of course, I assume that he's also heavily inspired by Alan Holdsworth. Not so much the note choices on the scales, a little bit more, the legato playing. But of course, guys like Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, he has this typical, Joe Satriani legato, like I would love to say. This kind of playing which consists out of pull-off and hammer-ons. So, and besides his legato playing, of course, Michael is mostly or heavily known for his tapping action. He has brought the tapping kind of ideas to the next level in the 90s, especially with this tapping here. Yes, this was Sea of Lies by Symphony X. I made a whole video about how to learn this tapping and the solo. Go check that out if you like. And he's often doing tapped arpeggios. I have a really special lick for you prepared in the licks section, but what he's mostly doing, for example, beside that lick that I'm going to show you, which is inspired by his Bet You Can Play This video, he is taking minor 7 arpeggios, for example, A minor 7, and is tapping it like this. So he's also including a technique that is called hammer-ons from nowhere, where we're hammering on a string without picking it to create a note. On those kind of licks, I think that the hardest thing to do is controlling the timing from the left and from the right hand. It really often happens to me because I'm not that much kind of a legato player. I'm working on it, still always working on your technique. But for me, it often happened that I have more some sort of this kind of rhythm. No, of course, a little bit over exaggerating right now, but that I don't have the control right now. Again, I'm working on it. That I don't play every note with the same length. So keep an eye on that and really focus on this kind of aspect when you're playing this kind of tapping stuff from Michael Romeo. And then, besides tapping, he is mostly known as well for his fluent economy picking. Economy picking means that when we're playing alternate picking, going from one string to the next string, that we have a rest stroke on the next string, like a sweeping motion. You see that I pick down, up, down, and after I've picked the last downstroke and I want to go to the G string, I'm resting with my pick on the G string before I play it. And so I can play it with both downstrokes. I'm not that much into economy picking as well. I'm 100% the alternate picking guy. Of course, there are licks like the Paul Gilbert lick that he's also playing with alternate picking, with straight alternate picking. But for example, when you have scale runs, descending scale runs or ascending scale runs like this one here, he would not alternate pick them, he would sweep pick them. For example, like down, up, down, up, 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 down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Doing the economy picking movement after the B string, or at the B string. And down the same. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, down. I'm planning to do a video about the pros and the cons of alternate picking or economy picking. I think that there are some cons. Yeah, you are more fluent, but you have less control when it comes to attack or to the rhythmical kind of aspect in economy playing. But if you are a fan of economy playing, feel free to check it out. It's not that much my kind of thing. I'm again working a lot on my alternate picking to play those licks in that tempo, but with alternate picking and not with economy picking. But of course, feel free to check out this awesome technique. And of course, what we can't forget by Michael Romeo is his whammy bar phrasing. And there, again, sadly here I have to disappoint you a little bit. I'm not a whammy bar player. I can't show you what he's doing there, can't demonstrate it right now, but he's doing some really cool stuff. Maybe there is a cool YouTube video out there from other cool YouTube guitar coaches where somebody is explaining this more and more in detail. So go check out this imaginary, not yet existing guitar player that is demonstrating how Michael Romeo is using his whammy bar. And leave a subscribe to his channel. Support the music scene. Alright, so much about technique. Now let's take some deeper looks into some licks, I would say. Here we go. Okay, the first lick that I have here is a so-called Paul Gilbert lick. It's this classical kind of idea. And this is the lick that we're also going to face off in the solo section, which comes after the lick section. I call this one Paul Gilbert lick because Paul Gilbert is mostly had the biggest impact on bringing this kind of licking idea into the guitar playing. I know Michelangelo has played it before Paul Gilbert, but Paul Gilbert brought it to fame. And the lick that I want to show you, the first lick, is this one here. Okay, and here we also have a really interesting symmetrical point of view on the guitar, which comes a little bit more out of, yeah, not a scale that he's using, but more kind of a shape that he is continuing through the scale, or through the strings. Because we are starting with Phrygian, continue with Phrygian, and then we have this note here, which comes from Phrygian dominant. And now you can give this one note, this one extra note that he's using here, you could give them a completely new scale name, double harmonic minor, Arabic, I don't know, Rockstar Energy Drink Major. I really have no clue. I'm just thinking about Rockstar because of this beautiful Rockstar here. I love energy drinks. I think this approach is kind of bullshit. He's just adding the same shape that he has on the G and on the D string also to the B string, creating some sort of tension here because of the major third of this, adding to this kind of idea. I would try to not overthink this, but see this as just a scale shape, just a finger shape that he is approaching on 3 strings. Alright, but the pattern is the interesting thing. We are starting off with a double Paul Gilbert lick. Then we are playing the scale ascending, playing the Paul Gilbert lick starting on the G string. But only one time, sorry, I played it now 2 times, but it's only 2 times here on the D string. Because after we're playing this one time, we're going from the G to the B string, and then we're adding the Paul Gilbert lick starting on the B string. And resolving to E. So again. Okay, this was lick number 1. Lick number 2 is a pentatonic lick that goes fast like this. And slow like this. And here we have this idea that we're taking 2 notes on a string and then going to the string below, playing 2 notes again, and then we are shifting this kind of sequence ascending through the horizontal scale over 2 strings. And here I'm kind of playing a little bit with rhythm, because this is something that Michael is doing a lot as well. He would not play, probably he would not play it like this, just going up the scale. He would add some notes that are repeating to this kind of section to create some more kind of interesting accents and dynamic in the rhythmical field here. Like this double note here. And here, creating the some sort of 7/8 kind of riff and lick over 4/4 bars. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we are adding the so-called stretched pentatonic scale. The stretched pentatonic scale is a scale where we're not playing like this, having all the same amount of notes on a string. We are having string skipping now, going from the A to the G, from the G to the E string. And this note here, we are adding this one to the A string. And then going straight to the G string. This is a stretched pentatonic. And now we are adding this stretched pentatonic to the pentatonic lick. And adding tapping now to the lick. Because this is something that Michael Romeo really loves to do, adding tapping to those kind of, or to expand the scale a little bit more. He could, or he often would play the stretched pentatonic as tapping, like this. Sorry. Like this one here. But he also can play some stretchy here with the left hand and adding the tapping or the expansion of the stretched pentatonic via tapping on the same string. A lot of people are thinking Michael Romeo has small hands, so he can't stretch at all, but that is false. That is not true. Even if you have small hands, you can do some stretches. Look at Marty Miller, he has small hands as well, and I don't have the biggest hands at all as well. So yeah, even Michael Romeo can do stretch pentatonic even with his kind of smaller hands. Alright, this was lick number 2. Now let's check out the next lick. The next lick is a lick that that you will hear often in his kind of soloing and his kind of playing. And I would say it's famously coming from the solo of Nevermore from the latest record, which is from 2016. God damn it, Symphony X. It's about damn time that you are releasing a new record. We have 2020 now. So, and the lick slow goes like this. And fast like this. And here we are taking basically one idea and playing this one through several octaves. And this is basically it. A really cool lick. A really intense lick, but really basic and not so hard lick, but the end results and the impact of that lick, especially in Nevermore as the grand opening of that solo, is really, really awesome. Let's continue to the next lick. The next lick is a tapping lick, and then slow. And then fast. And here I'm taking a B minor arpeggio and I'm splitting up that arpeggio, not playing it like this or like here, but playing it with tapping and string skipping. And I'm going to put this one down so I have a little bit more kind of muted guitar. And the basic sequence of that arpeggio is a 4-note sequence, but in this arpeggio we only have 3 notes, the root, the third and the fifths. And this one creates this really interesting rhythmical kind of feeling. And here again we have a lot of hammer on from nowhere. Sorry, like here, this one that I've just failed. And going back to the minor third where we have a hammer on from nowhere as well. So every time when we're changing the strings we have a hammer on from nowhere. And we are taking this kind of idea and playing it through the inversion. So we're starting at the root note, playing 4 notes from root to root. Then we're playing from third to third. By not changing the fingering, but we are adding one note to our sequence here. Now we are more and more changing the fingering by deleting one note and adding one note. Because after the minor third, we are not playing that minor third again, we are now playing the fifths, starting with the tapping note. And now we are on the D string and we are doing the same thing in the next octave. Sorry, this one is tricky. To get back to the minor third here, which is in the same fret but 2 strings below. And then resolving to the octave again. Alright, this is a really cool tapping lick in the style of Michael Romeo. And now I have an arpeggio lick for you. And in slow, the arpeggio lick goes like this. And in fast like this. And basically what I'm doing is I take the concept of this 2-note arpeggio and adding to that the sweep arpeggio with the rhythmical kind of idea in the beginning of the sweep arpeggio. So it's basically those 2 methods that I have in the arpeggio section that I explained in the arpeggio section putting together. Alright. And so much for the licks of in the style of Michael Romeo. Now let's check out the solo. And first I'm going to play my cover of the solo, and then we're going to take a deep dive look into the build-up and the analysis of this solo. And this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's go to the next and the final chapter of today's video. to break out of the intensity and to get more intensity to get the jump scare. You have to start low and build up suspension more and more and more, and then you have the jump scare. And it's really kind of similar in creating a solo. When you're creating a solo and you constantly are playing fast subdivisions, you don't have a suspension, you don't have a build up. You're always on this kind of level. And the problem is it gets boring after a while. You don't have the opportunity to get higher than that and to keep the attention of the listener and to create a story or tell a story. And I think Michael is an absolute genius when it comes to the build-up of solos. He has a really good intuitive feeling on how to create a good build-up for a solo. And one thing he likes to do is he has a strong entrance in the solo. Take a while, go check out some solos from Michael, and the first bar is most of the time one of the greatest moments of that solo, because he has so often such a good entrance into his solos. For example, Nevermore, we have talked about that, like Smoke and Mirrors. What was Smoke and Mirrors again? Something like that. It's been a while since I've covered this solo, but man, this entrance is so groovy. It's playing together with the riff that he's playing, or that is playing from the rhythm guitar. It's not just like any kind of lick with to start that solo. He is playing together with the band, playing together with a mythical idea, and he's taking that motive and he's expanding it, and he's putting groove into it, he's putting rhythm into it. He's getting some interesting phrasing into this entrance. Eve of Seduction has a similar kind of really cool intro melody. It has an entrance to the solo. So yeah, you can see the entrance of the solo is always strong, it's always interesting, and always keeps you pumped for the solo that is coming. And the same here in Fear the Unknown. It's simple, it's basic, but it keeps your attention straight from the start, straight from the beginning. Just with those two notes. And then what happens afterwards a lot is in Smoke and Mirrors, in The Dragon Den, in Eve of Seduction, in Nevermore, in all those kind of cool solos. After that, he is doing some crazy shred action. And here in Fear of the Unknown, it's the Paul Gilbert lick that we've talked about in the lick section. Combining with some descending scales. Everything in the Phrygian dominant scale. And this descending pattern, for example, is something that he would play with economy picking. I am playing it with alternate picking, straight alternate picking. Strong entrance, strong build-up, and then bam, the shred lick. Go right into 16-note triplets, right into your face. But that only not for 8 bars or 10 bars to get boring. It's the right amount of time that he's using here to keep you still attention. And those in here now in Fear of the Unknown, it's 1 bar the entrance lick, and then 3 bar the Paul Gilbert speed picking lick. And then we have the 4 bars closed, an idea for 4 bars, and the solo is consistent at 4 times 4 bars, so 16 bars for the complete solo. Yeah, you will clearly see how he's building his ideas around those 4 bars every time doing a cut after 4 bar, but inside of that 4 bar, it's really interesting. It's not playing an idea for 4 bars, then the next idea for 4 bars, then the next idea for 4 bars. No, it can be like entrance lick, 1 bar, speed picking lick, next 3 bars. All right, 4 bars done. Okay, now the next lick, now the next idea for 3 bars, next idea for 2 bars, and so on, and so on, and so on. But he's always doing the cut after 4 bars. And then comes the next idea after he is playing a fast lick for 3 bars. Why doing a break and then playing another fast lick? That would be boring. Go down with the subdivision, and he's doing this here as well. He's now, after he's built up a lot of tension with the 16-note triplets, and you build up tension, by the way, by 2 things: the density of notes and the note pitch. And one of the biggest tensions that you can have in, I would say, when it comes to speech, it's playing up here 16-note triplets. Oh, sorry for the sloppy playing. But he is releasing some tension here. Build up tension with the high-paced kind of speed picking lick that we have before that. And now he is going back again, taking a breath, and now he's playing it a little bit slower, but taking the space now that he has by playing it slower and filling it with some interesting arpeggios. Here's something which I forgot to mention in the arpeggios section. What he is doing, like Yngwie and like a lot of metal guitar players, he likes to play a diminished arpeggio over a Phrygian dominant riff or a Phrygian dominant lick to create interesting sound which still comes out Phrygian dominant, but with a little bit more kind of tension in the sound itself. And there's one trick when you are playing, for example, an E Phrygian dominant. You can play F diminished over it and creating a really cool, interesting sound. Again, all those notes are in the scale of Phrygian dominant, but you're focusing on the flat 9, on the major third, on the fifths, and on the sevenths, and this makes it a little bit more interesting, and you get a really, really cool, interesting sound out of it. And he's doing right that in the next section. Out of this was diminished arpeggio, F diminished arpeggio, and now he's adding some chromatic sounds to it. Because he has the tension already from the diminished arpeggio. Why not spicing it up with a little bit of chromaticism inside of it? And the chromatical idea and the important thing here is it's leading to somewhere. He still have target notes. It's the 13th fret and the 16th fret. He's just adding the 15th and the 14th fret in between that. Going down, going descending and ascending again. Then playing this one in thirds, or the split into 2 arpeggio, and then he's going to this kind of 4-note phrase here. And then he's doing something really, really cool. He's repeating the intro phrase. Now here on the 14th and on the 16th fret. A really, really cool reprise from the intro lick. So there's another thing that Michael is doing a lot and that I always suggest to people who wants to write more and interesting solos. Play with motifs. It's totally fine to take a melody and to play this melody a little bit more often in that solo, but creating a motif out of it. So change it a little bit. Change maybe the key, change the scale, keep the rhythm and the phrasing, but change the note that you are playing, like in this one here. It's just, you will recognize instantly it's the same kind of motif, but with different notes. And this is something that Michael is doing a lot, and I don't hear that often when people are playing solo. Take your time, take the breath, and repeat motifs. It's such a great way to create more interesting solos instantly by playing some ultra crazy shit here. It's a little thing that makes it a little bit more interesting. In this case, it's motifs that are repeated throughout the solo. And now, after we have, again, 4 bars, a little bit of a slower lick here, 60 note instead 60 note triplets, and here it's the same interesting, again, build up like in the beginning. We have this motif and then bam, the 60 note triplets, bam, here we go, speed. And now we have again the repetition of the intro motif, and then again we have bam, 60 note triplets, bam, alright, in your face. And this one, now we have not ascending like with the Porgy lick, now we have a descending, and here we are playing the so-called Pepsi lick from inspired from Vinnie Moore's Pepsi commercial. First we are playing the reversed Porgy lick, and then we are playing down the scale the Pepsi lick. But here another interesting cool thing is some rhythmical accent that he's using here. Remember the pentatonic lick from the lick section? He's doing something really familiar here. He's not playing the Pepsi lick, just playing it horizontally through the scale. No, he is repeating some notes here and there. He's repeating some patterns, some sequences to create a little bit kind of more an interesting vibe from the rhythmical point of view and from the accents. So for example, we're first playing it descending the scale, and then we're playing 19, 17, 16 on the E string twice to play a 3-note phrase up going from the E to the G string. Sorry, not 3-note, a 3-string phrase. And repeating as 18, 17, 15 the B string, and then continuing through the scale. This is a little bit more interesting. Instead of playing, maybe going down the scale here, and so on and so on. So we have going down, 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 then playing something twice, going down, going back again up, going down, down a little bit more, and going back up. It's this kind doing 2 steps down, 1 step up kind of idea, which makes a lot of things really, really interesting when it comes to those shred patterns. If you want to know more about this one, you can check out the Then of Speed Picking, my online speed picking course, where I put over 5 hours of video material about the speed picking technique and a lot of really, really cool licks, over more than 50 licks inside of it. But Michael is doing this as well in, for example, the Smoke and Mirror solo, the beginning of the second solo of Smoke and Mirror, and also the second solo of Sins and Shadows is a really familiar picking ascending lick through the scale. Alright, after we have played this lick again here for 3 bars, and now for the next bar we're starting in bar 4, which with a motif, with a kind of lick and idea that he continues through the next bar. So he is not thinking, or he's not ending, okay, here's the 1 from my bar, the first beat, I have to end with the lick and have to start with the next lick. No, he is thinking over the bar. And the next lick, for example, the next motif does not start on the 1, it starts on the 2. So it's also totally fine to leave a little break after you have done just a quick lick. It's totally fine to leave a break from 1 beat or 2 beats. It's absolutely fine. Sometimes you have, I know that for myself, you have the feeling of fear of missing out, of, yeah, but you have to show how fast and what kind of crazy cool licks you can play. And there are 2 beats which have no licks inside of it, so I can pump it up with 16-note triplets. No, take the space and take the breath you can take out of those 2 beats which have nothing inside of it. It's totally fine to play nothing. And the next lick that we have, I talked a little bit about that in the phrasing section. It's the idea in thirds. And then we have this really cool idea where he is playing 8 notes, and the phrase that he wants to play is this one here, but he's not playing it boringly like this. So again, he's using phrasing. He's really accenting every note, so we have a little bit more of staccato inside of it. And then the last note is Marty Friedman way, bending from 1 half step below to the target note. And then we have this kind of idea to resolve to our root note from the E Phrygian dominant scale. And here, in the last bending, you can clearly see what I've talked about in the phrasing. When you're checking out his video, his playthrough video, for example, you can slow it down 50%, and then you will hear the 8-note vibrato, and the vibrato which is going wide as 1 full step. Yeah, another thing that I really like to do, which I learned while studying jazz guitar, or which I came up with while studying jazz guitar, is when I want to know what kind of build-up a certain player has in a certain solo, I create, I hope you can see it, this thing here, I hope you can see it. I draw the bars, for example, 1, 2, the first 4 bars right here, and the next 4 bars, the next 4 bars, the next 4 bars. And then I create this certain kind of graphic that shows me, okay, how is the build-up? He starts slow with the intro motif, ba, 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 and then in bar number 2, he goes with the tension. I really hope you can see that. He really goes up, bam, a little bit faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And then he breaks down, playing the 60 notes, playing the diminished arpeggio, building up more and more, a little bit tension, a little bit more up to that point. And then here in the next bar, he is up to the high intense again with the 60 note triplets. It's falling a little bit more down and down, down, because he's starting high and then he's going descending. And in the end, he is going down, 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 with the last note, which is a little bit more kind of tension building up the bending here. So you can clearly see how he has his peaks, like for example here, and then he's going down again, and then he's building up a peak again, and so on and so on. So I highly recommend to do this as well for your own, or if you want to create a solo to make the certain graphic, or if you want to analyze some of your solos to make the certain graphic to see, okay, is my solo up here all the time and up to the peak, you know? Or do I have a build up to the peak and then it's going down again and then a little bit higher again and down and so on, to keep it a little bit more interesting. Alright, and this was the analysis of the solo Fear of the Unknown. Thanks for checking out this video. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe, to leave a like, comment, etc, etc. I hope I'm going to see you in my next video. So far, cheers and stay progress. Bye.